the first people joining in. The recording has started, and I'll start with a video for introduction.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Connect with the Experts at GTC 2021. This is an interactive session, so before we begin, please go to the settings icon on the upper right corner. Check your configurations and select the correct device for microphone input and audio output so that you can have a productive session. Follow the steps on the screen. If necessary, close out this browser and rejoin using a Chrome or Edge browser. If prompted, activate your microphone. Then, in the Device Settings menu, select the right device for microphone and audio output until you can hear your mic is registering your voice. Your audio will be on mute until you are in your one-on-one session. Here's today's format. We will begin with an introduction of the team, then go into a short overview presentation on the session topics before we dive into the Q&A portion. While you are either enjoying the group Q&A in the common room or waiting for your one-on-one breakout room session, you may submit questions for our experts via the room chat window. Our experts in this room will be happy to answer any of your questions in the group setting here. To sign up for a deep dive one-on-one conversation with one of our experts, please open the chat window from the top menu bar and click on the room chat icon. You'll find the one-on-one sign-up sheet with a hyperlink on the top of the window. Please take 30 seconds to sign up for the opportunity to meet with an expert one-on-one in the breakout room. One-on-ones are first come, first serve, and are limited to 5 minutes each. If you have signed up for the one-on-one breakout room, please be advised that the transition to the breakouts will be sudden and without warning. Note that your mic and webcam will be automatically activated. After 5 minutes, we will send you back in the common room where you can continue with the group Q&A. In these times of uncertainty, we are proud to find new ways to bring our community together so we can continue to learn from each other. We hope this session will give you insight and inspiration. Thank you for your participation. We will begin shortly.
Welcome to our Connect with the Experts session on professional rendering and virtualization. This is an interactive session. You're invited to ask questions through the room chat. As described, you can also sign up for a little more private one-on-one session. There is the corresponding link in the room chat where you would need to sign up for these one-on-one sessions. So we have a bunch of experts here on a variety of topics. So we got solution architects and enterprise support engineers joining and being available for sessions today. I've listed here their names, but more interesting, I guess, for everybody, their areas of expertise. So majority are experts on our virtual GPU technologies, including the hypervisors, the protocols, the deployment, the sizing, our new product, NVIDIA AI for Enterprise. We have colleagues here who look more focused after the partner ecosystem. So if you are a partner of NVIDIA, have questions that are around the partner program, those two might be the right people to talk to. And then we have Paul from our enterprise support here. So if you are a user of a paid license and have a support contract with NVIDIA, you can talk to Paul about details and learn about details how to best contact enterprise support and the services that we provide. We're going to be splitting up our team here into the optional one-on-one breakouts. So I have a bunch of people ready in the breakout rooms. So let me start with Mahmoud, expert on the AI for enterprise technology. He's in a breakout room. We have Chris in a breakout room, expert for Omniverse, CloudXR, and the NVIDIA RTX technology for synchronization and large-scale visualization. Pretty similar for Anthony, also in a breakout room, additionally expert on our independent software vendors connection and partnership. So more knowledgeable with how to integrate specific NVIDIA features into rendering engines. And then we have Simon in the breakout room. He's a specialist on remoting stacks and codecs. So if there is a question in that area that you want to ask, you might want to sign up for a breakout room with Simon. And then we have Yitz in the breakout room as well, one of the partner SAs with some focus on the partners. The other people listed here, like Lee, like Tom and Thomas and Martin and Paul, we will stay in the common room. And we encourage you to ask your questions in the room chat so that we would either pick these to be answered on stage verbally, and we would give a little explanation around the question, the answer, or alternatively, if this gets really busy, we would even type up the answers in the room chat for you to read there. I'd like to encourage you to ask any question. I want to trigger you for questions with, assuming you've seen the keynote from Jensen. So I would like to hear from you guys. What is your biggest takeaway from the Jensen's keynote? That would be very interesting. And please type up your thoughts here in the room chat, and just give it a single keyword or a small note. What was your most interesting, most important takeaway from any of the announcements, any of the products that Jensen had in the keynote? The toy Jensen, somebody says, was very impressive. So did you all understand the variety of technologies that have been used here? We'll be able to talk about that. Omniverse. Yeah, I think Omniverse was pretty omnipresent in Jensen's keynote, because a lot of the different demos and a lot of even the video content around Jensen, the background, the scene that he was put into, were all rendered in Omniverse. So over the series of the last GTCs, we know more about Jensen's kitchen than we would really like, because basically the whole thing has been constructed in real 3D into every little detail, so that we could use Omniverse to real-time ray trace Jensen's kitchen. We also had an announcement that Omniverse is going to be available for enterprise use cases. What else was very interesting or fascinating to you, or actually what did leave a question from any of the technologies, from any of the announcements, from any of the strategies that NVIDIA is doing? Please type up any type of keyword or short statements in the room chat. This really is meant to be an interactive session. So everybody is asked to participate. This is not going to be a presentation. If you don't ask questions, this is going to get really boring. So please add more questions, add more statements. I see that somebody is interested in learning more about the NVIDIA AI for enterprise. maybe I would like to kick off with Martin. Martin, are you willing to tell us a high level about what NVIA for Enterprise is?
Yeah, happily. And I think NVIE is particularly interesting for the community right now. We've kind of been at a space in AI where people have really had to have dedicated hardware and specialist software skills that are outside of the standard enterprise skill set. So NVIE is really a project between us, VMware, and our OEM partners to make AI more accessible to the enterprise. So it really allows you to pull down containers from our ecosystem. If you've not looked at NGC, for example, I would certainly have a check out of that. We've got a whole bunch of pre-built containers that are all optimized and ready to go on our platform. And you can pull those down straight into VMware as of version 1.1 on NVIE. And that really allows you to have an AI ecosystem accessible and manageable by the average enterprise IT systems administrators. So hopefully we expect this to be kind of a big step towards democratization of AI, making that more accessible for more enterprises and fitting inside the standard skill sets that are already there. Have you got any other specific questions that you would like to know about in terms of the technologies involved or how things are put together, or does that kind of help?
If there are specific questions about NVIE, it might be useful to go into the breakout room with Mahmoud, who's our expert and in EMEA. But I think Martin captured it pretty well. It is a attempt, but I'm thinking it's going to be successful, to make it easier to get access to a fully supported hardware and software stack to do AI, right? Be less focusing on what do I need to put together as a set of tools, more just buy the right certified config and then go, right? It's been very complicated to maintain hardware and software properly for a bunch of these software stacks, bunch of these AI tools to work properly and optimally. And the NVIE certification stack is targeted to ease a data scientist's life.
Yeah, and the other really key thing around that is just the breadth of support that's wrapped around that whole service. AI so far tends to be a very open source style ecosystem where you are out on your own when you come across a lot of problems, whereas we've tied a whole support stack around that from the software side as well, which I think will be particularly valuable for those types of customers as well.
There is a question about how the best way to get started with CloudXR. CloudXR is a streaming element for streaming wireless, right? So there are multiple ways to try this out. To my knowledge, you could just download it and try it out. You can also try it out from a cloud service provider. So it runs in some cloud service instances. For details on really first-class hands-on, I recommend you take a breakout with Anthony or with Chris. Both of them have great experience with CloudXR. So please take the option, sign up in that spreadsheet for one-on-one with Chris or with Anthony. Both are equally experienced in getting going. The question came in about Omniverse Farm, which is pretty much a announcement at the moment, not a shipping product. But it actually evolved from our needs to use a lot of GPU hardware for a lot of the jobs around GTC, for a lot of the elements that you've seen in Jensen's keynote. Like I said in the intro, Omniverse was used a lot for many parts in the GTC keynote videos and backgrounds. And to get that done in a short amount of time, we needed to use a lot of GPUs. So we basically used it internally a lot to get access and easy batch type access to a lot of idling hardware. So we used fragments of idle server clusters, but also workstations that sat idle at engineers' desks, which could even be VPN connected home desks, home office desks, right? So the question was, how much did we actually been pushing it internally? We've been using it a lot, and it evolved from actually our own needs to be using it. And we're working on making it a very universal tool to schedule very different kind of jobs. Any other team want to add something to Omniverse Farm? I don't see anybody nodding, so I'll take that as a no. Do you know if they looked at OpenQ? No, I don't know that. I'm not as deep into it, and actually, since it is not a shipping product, the field folks that we are here in EMEA didn't get any detailed technical training and been not part of any customer discussion on it yet. It's been mostly used internally, but we'll record the questions and we can get back to you if you'd like, so that we can give you the answer later. We'll certainly take the feedback and look into it. I see there is another question about Omniverse. Omniverse licensing for small, medium businesses. I think that is enterprise, right? We have a license minimum that would require for that's targeting a minimum of 4 users for interactive. So that is, to our understanding, small medium business. So I'm not sure if I fully get the point of the question here. At the moment, I think the hurdle for a supported stack, so a few of the features that are not in the individual Omniverse for individual, but especially the supported stack, the minimum is going to be $9,000, which includes which includes the licenses that you would need typically for up to 4 users, and then you can add more users by buying more licenses. For detailed questions, again, go for a one-on-one breakout. I recommend Chris here. He's an expert on Omniverse. Again, so if he's not available, sign up with Anthony.
The more expensive licenses for Omniverse are all around the creators. So you might find that I noticed the follow-up there was that the starting price is expensive. You might find that initial price gets you in, but you can have many more users with a lower cost license viewing the output in Omniverse. So that's a much lower cost increase for those smaller businesses as well.
Yeah, right. There is a differentiation whether one of your employees needs to modify the data set interactively for others to be visibly changing, or whether it is pretty much a view-only user, right? We consider that some users might only need to look at any data, any changes, but not actively change any of the 3D data that you're working on. And that's why we have that difference. And yes, if you need more users that are not changing, creating, then you don't need more creator licenses, and additional licenses are cheaper than the creator ones, right? Good point. There is a question that was, we put so many new SDKs out. how does a programmer, I assume, a system engineer, track the roadmaps? I don't think it'll be feasible to track all 150 SDKs that we have. The assumption is that a developer will usually be a specialist in some specific areas of NVIDIA technology, so that he'll be interested in a bunch of SDKs. And then all those SDKs have roadmaps that are absolutely individual per each SDK, per each technology. We don't force alignment between SDKs. Obviously, we will try to do updates around GDC so that there is a good reason for announcing major functionality or speed upgrades, but it'll be individual. We can't provide longer term or overview type SDK roadmaps. It'll be per individual SDK, per individual technology the SDK is targeting.
A source that might be useful is you can sign up for developer news, and we send out emails on topics of your interest, and that's probably a good way to also keep in tune as to what's happening with your areas of interest.
Yes, right. Most of the SDKs are only available from developer.nvidia.com, and you can sign up for an account there, and you can then sign up also for more specific updates on those dedicated SDKs. We try to build communities around specific technologies. Okay, there is a very specific question about, what was it? Audio to gesture. I can't answer that question. Anybody in the team able to answer that question? Will there be a public version of audio to gesture?
I don't know.
Nothing planned yet.
I think the best way to monitor this is to sign up for the Omniverse for individuals, because then that way you get access to a lot of beta and non-production ready elements of parts of Omniverse. And the Omniverse launcher for individuals will give you much more options to download and try than the launcher for enterprise, because enterprise is usually a much more restricted and much more controlled environment. So maybe audio to gesture will show up there, but I don't know, Andreas, if it is today. So that's the best answer we can give here. If you're more interested in exactly that, send us an email, and we shall follow up. A generic way to ask emails to our team of solution architect experts is usually to write an email to quadrosvs@nvidia.com. I'm typing that in the chat. So that way you can ask questions to solution architects in the professional visualization area, and we would follow up by email answering specific questions usually. Are there any recommended white papers for how to scale out multi-region collaborative workflows, including remote cloud workstation for Omniverse for the animation, video effects, animation industry?
I shared a link to our documentation, especially for Omniverse, and there we have some sizing recommendations. Most of the time when you are sizing an environment, it depends on the workload and the actual data set that you are using and so on. But there we have some guidelines to use, or that you can use for, I would say, initial virtualized environment, which you could use as well for your cloud environment, remote environment.
Yeah.
You can check the link, and if it's not sufficient or does not answer your question, you can answer a question in more detail, I would say.
NVIDIA is not a very big documentation company, as you might have already recognized. So we're not throwing out that many white papers and technical specification documents and stuff like that. We love the communication, the interactivity with our customers and partners, right? So we would always want to learn from you what you need rather than spend time in documenting what we have and not seeing what is missing, right? Not getting the feedback really what is missing. So appreciate a lot if you are willing to talk to us. What is it that you're looking for? What is it that you need? So we can follow up on that, especially on Omniverse. This is all still pretty new, right? We don't have years of experience, especially not with global companies, globally working companies. So you said multi-region, big scale out. Everything is pretty young still, and we don't have like guidance from experience from big customers, right? We're using it internally, but that is obviously different than using it in a customer site or in a customer workflow. Yeah, keep the questions coming. This is really good. Don't be shy. Ask any type of questions. Are there any efforts to integrate tools for virtual production, like the NVIDIA background removal, into Omniverse, or RiverMax for video drivers into Omniverse? Can't tell yet. Like I said, Omniverse is a very young product. It is a very open product, right? We're developing it in a way that everything and almost anything can be plugged and piped into it. At the beginning where we are focusing on specific workflows for a limited set of industries so that we can productize and make that work first, and then keep going with adding more and more. Theoretically, everything can be connected somehow. We invite any developer to participate in the development of connectors for Omniverse or other type tools for Omniverse. Majority of Omniverse is open. So we'll take that feedback that you ask for this to the product team, and we have certainly gotten the media entertainment industry is the terminology that we use, but that is actually the animation industry. We have that on our roadmap, and I could drop a name. Jamie Allen is our expert on the sales side for exactly that industry. So maybe not sure who asked the question. Maybe you have a contact to Jamie Allen already. If not, use that email address and we can follow up. Yeah, Chris confirms, our expert on Omniverse, he confirms that virtual production is already a use case we've been looking at. But it takes a bunch of hundreds of developers to do Omniverse as much as we have it today. So we still need to focus on specific workflows and get them fully working before we can expand for other workflows. And we also need the right connectors for the geometry to be ingested into the USD format that Omniverse uses. Yeah, any more questions? Keep them coming. This is a good discussion. Well, discussion is one direction discussion here. I'm talking, but please keep your comments coming, your questions coming. Any type questions, right? The questions can be around our virtualization stack, about which GPUs are supported with virtualization, which are not, about availability of GPUs. We haven't announced any major hardware updates, but we also are suffering from supply issues. So we had to do some modifications to the available products to what would usually be called a roadmap. Actually, we're more working around the availability issues with adding SKUs to roadmap that are easier to be produced and a guaranteed supply. So if there's any questions around that, any questions about the latest features that we updated with vGPU 13, questions about our add-in card workstation roadmap, our products that we offer there, the capabilities, questions like differences between a RTX A6000 active card for workstations and a A40 card for passively cooled for input into servers. So all these kind of questions are absolutely valid questions for us to answer here. So please don't be shy. Share questions, share your thoughts.
When are we all going to have a mini toy Jensen at our desktops?
Yeah, I think there was an announcement that we're going to have Omniverse show, which will be more like small fragments of Omniverse with a specific demo included, right? And Toy Jensen could be one of those showing up soon. The kiosk one might be similar, but the idea is, since we use Omniverse for so many things, that any NVIDIA demo should be part of Omniverse, should be done inside our Omniverse technology. We're considering making some of these demos available exactly as that, as a showroom, as a little demo thing that could be distributed standalone without major dependencies. So okay, so Andreas has a bunch of questions around CloudXR. I think the background of the question here, am I able to run more than one CloudXR session, is without actually virtualization, without the overhead. The answer would be, how do you make a single OS instance multi-user capable, right? Would you want to run multiple users with an individual CloudXR session each? Then you would need to have a multi-user capable OS, right? That's the point about virtualization, that you fragment the hardware for multiple users. So the quick answer is no. If there was a use case where you wanted 2 streams for a single user, 2 or more streams for a single user, first of all, I would wonder why. What's the use case? Please explain so that we can learn from it. But if that was the case, I wonder if there would be the necessity to synchronize the 2 streams, right? If it was for a left eye, right eye session, it would certainly need some synchronization. And that is not part of today's CloudXR, because we don't know about the use case. We have 5 virtual people in a single room. Yes, but each of the person would see its own view on the data, right? They move individually, so they need to receive an individual view. It would potentially be the same data set or the same data structures, but each of them has a separate view. I'm not sure if there is a way to keep that set up with, say, 4 to 5 individual views in a single OS instance. Whether your software stack is capable of taking 5 people's input from their position and head movement into the same instance of UE4. I can't answer that. If that's the underlying need, and that the underlying UE4 can do that. I don't know if we can put 5 CloudXR sessions into the same operating system, and how each CloudXR session would be differentiating which part of the frame buffer to stream. It's a good question. Yes, Andreas, the way that we would envision doing this today is that you would have a fragment of a GPU with virtualization, and have one user per OS, and by that, by a fragment of the GPU. Obviously, the performance of the GPU is going to be lesser, so it really depends on how much performance you need if you could put that many users on a single GPU. But then it'll be easy, because basically each of the OS instances and UE4 instances run on the same data set, but they run single in an OS. So CloudXR has no question, no need to be told which exact frame buffer fragment it should stream. And the input is also single user, right? So you might want to follow up with us using the quadrosvs@nvidia.com email on that question. Or you want to sign up with Chris on a dedicated session here. Maybe he's got that question before from other users of CloudXR. But we would envision that CloudXR is single user per one OS instance. And yes, those OS instances could run on a shared GPU, on a fragmented GPU. If you need more performance, of course, you can run a full GPU. But if lesser performance is fine, you can share that one GPU between multiple users. Here's another question. Reads, is it possible that I implement Omniverse in the Cry engine? I'm tempted to answer like no, because it's basically the other way around. You would have to create a connector between the Cry engine and Omniverse. Basically, a connector between Cry engine and USD file format. Once that exists, you can connect those two. But you can't take Omniverse into the Cry engine. Omniverse itself is more, but is an engine. And Cry engine needs to connect and exchange with the Omniverse rendering engine. I don't know whether there are any plans for somebody to create such a connector today. Obviously, connectors that not NVIDIA are working on is not for NVIDIA to announce, right? So we can't do that. We appreciate if you ask your contacts at the manufacturer, at the software partner, if they are considering to create a connector to Omniverse, right? That would be very helpful if our software partners would actually see customer demand for being able to interact and exchange with Omniverse. Yeah, please sign up for one-on-ones with the experts on Omniverse, CloudXR, virtualization, vGPU, the remoting protocols and codecs, about how to size for vGPU, how to decide which deployment of a virtual environment you want to choose. If there are questions about licensing, questions about the service that our enterprise support team is going to give.
Hey, Frank, I don't know if you noticed, but Yitz has pointed out in our internal chat that we've now announced the A2 GPU, and it might be useful to mention the use cases around A2 GPU.
Yeah, go ahead. Talk about A2 for a second.
Okay. Yeah, it was more of a question for you, but I'm happy to talk about it as well. So yeah, you know, we do have an A2 GPU, and it's a single slot form factor card, low wattage, GPU, and it's built on the same technology platform. It's an Ampere-based card. It's built on the same chip as the A16 GPU that we've announced earlier on in the year. So this is an A16 GPU, and it's a dual slot card, and it's got 4 GPUs on it. And the A2 is very, very similar in size to this little guy here, the T4, slightly smaller, I believe. And really, it's got 1 GPU in it, and this card here has got 4 GPUs of the same type in it. So what's the A2 aimed at? Well, the A2 is aimed at edge use cases, areas where maybe you have space constraints. You know, you have a very small form factor computing environment. Maybe you don't have enough power or cooling to handle a dual slot passive card like the A40 or the A16 here. So obviously the T4 is under supply constraint at the moment. Some OEMs have T4, some don't. So, you know, T4 isn't something that you're going to find is particularly easy to get hold of anymore. So A2 for that edge use case is going to fill that area. Now, one of the things that I think that I've heard and people have started asking me, especially from the OEMs, about the the A2 is it the replacement for this guy, the T4? You know, it looks like the same form factor. It's got 16 gig of RAM. So is it really the Ampere version of this guy? And the answer to that is it depends what you're using this for. If you were using the T4 for low space constrained and power constrained edge inference workloads, so artificial intelligence type of workloads, then yes, you know, it will be a good replacement. Is it a good replacement for this if you were using this GPU as an entry level professional graphics card, or if you were using the T4 as a VDI card, you know, a knowledge worker type of office worker sort of workload? And the answer to that would be no, because this guy here, the A16, would be a much better card to use for VDI than that A2. Reason being that this has got 4 Ampere chips on it, this guy, and the A2 has only got 2 Ampere chips of the same type as this on it. So in order to get the same power as this guy,
A2 is 1 GPU. You said 2.
Exactly. Oh, sorry. Yeah. So this has got 4 on it, and the A2 has got 1. So for to have the same power as this guy, you'd need 4 slots, 4 PCIe slots, and 4 A2s to get the same power as one of these cards for VDI. And because VDI is typically in the data center and it's typically, you know, centralized and not at the edge, then the ability to put higher power cards and cards that are you know, bigger form factor is less of a problem for those guys. So, you know, for VDI infrastructures and for low-end professional visualization, we would definitely recommend the A16 card with 4 GPUs over that new A2 with 1 GPU. Okay, even though it is smaller. So is there anything else you want to add to that, Frank?
Yeah, we immediately got the question whether we can point to the product's documentation. I just want to re-emphasize that A2 is a very tiny GPU targeting a very specific use case that was compute at the edge, but is less performant than T4, right? So it is available, which makes it a option if you were looking at T4 for compute, but it certainly is not a targeted GPU for doing graphics or even heavy graphics, right? So if you're thinking about virtualized office graphics, A16 is the card to go, A2 isn't. And if you're thinking about 3D graphics, A2 is not that GPU at all, right? So even though my colleagues are not tired of adding more and more information about the A2 in the chat, I would not recommend that card for you. You've been asking about graphics before, and A2 is a tiny, very tiny card. Unless you're now asking for T400, T600, T1000. Yes, these cards have been available for quite a while. They are the entry-level Quadro or RTX cards. And we will have supply constraints on these cards as well, we are trying to avoid the issue of availability, which on these entry-level cards are mostly around memory. So we are issuing a few of these cards with twice the memory density, so twice the memory size, because the memory vendor is only offering the more dense memory. So we have to up the memory to be able to deliver the cards. But they are entry-level cards, right? You really need to make sure the performance you get from these cards. From the T400 is about a 35 watt card. The T1000 is a 70 watt card. You can't expect a 150 or a 250 watt performance from such a tiny card. So be careful about what you need, and contact us at Quadro SVS if you want to, and we can discuss more details about these new products. These niche products that niche only was created by the lack of availability for the other cards. So and I'm with NVIDIA for 20 years. I've never had the situation where we had to do a roadmap update that was more confusing than now, because basically we are taking away product and squeezing in other product just by that availability reasoning, and not by making it a nicely adjusted and well-positioned roadmap of different products. So apologies to our customers on that confusion, but we figured it'll be better for you, but also for us, if we could at least sell some product instead of not being able to deliver anything. Okay, I see you're okay, your green light on my comments, Andreas. Thank you. For any questions, follow up with Quadro SVS, where we'll be happily going into discussion or call you back and follow up. Video encode decode, I do see it now. We should probably discuss the A16, because for the price and for the power and space budget, you'll get 4 GPUs. And if you really want to do mostly encode, decode, transcode, A16 is the card to go, because of that trick that we got 4 GPUs in that form factor, which all add their encode, decode capabilities, right? There is no way that you get 4 GPUs in the same power budget, in the same slot size budget for that specific job that only needs small GPUs, but good encode, decode performance. Yeah, this is already touching on our changes with regards to products that are available and our changes to a roadmap. So to be really clear, T4 is under heavy supply constraint, and we're trying to put people on the A2 where they're feasible. All others will have to go up the stack for bigger GPUs. The A30 is available, A100 should be available. Not all of them are a obvious replacement for a tiny card. On the workstation side, we have the need to double the memory on some of the entry-level cards, which explicitly are T400, T1000, and A2000. And we're also going to see some problems with availability of the A4000 and A5000. We're working on finding alternatives product in that range as well. The best availability is A6000 actually. Andreas, for your specific use case, the question whether the A16 is the only product that has more than 1 GPU, exactly, right? We usually have 1 GPU per board, mainly because majority of the jobs don't natively scale across multiple GPUs. So you would need a big GPU anyhow. But there are very limited use cases where many GPUs in a good form factor do a great job. And one of them is entry-level VDI, because part of the VDI job is to encode the stream of the desktop to the user. So we need a lot of encoding anyhow. And the other is encode, decode, transcode for just the purpose of doing that job. And that's where many small GPUs are more efficient usually than a few big GPUs, because basically the encoder scales with clock, but not with size of the GPU, right? So A16 is your perfect board. And it's the only board that has more than a single GPU. Right. Keep more questions coming. This is starting to be an interactive exchange, mainly between Andreas and our team here. But feel free to jump on the chat, ask your questions. Otherwise, I'm going to bore you for the last couple of minutes with prepared questions that we usually get. And I think it's better to ask your individual questions here. There are a bunch of names in the participants list that haven't typed up anything yet. So I wonder whether you came here hoping to see a presentation or whether you could come up with an individual question of yours. All right. Minimum specification to run the Omniverse desktop. All right. That's a good question. The requirement for an Omniverse instance is an RTX card, right? That's the one part. We need the RTX technology. For professional users, we recommend obviously the professional cards, but team, correct me if I got this wrong. I'm assuming it should run on a gaming card, on a RTX gaming card as well. Please give me some nodding here.
Yeah, exactly. Omniverse view requirement or required at least a RTX 2080.
2080. All right.
Yeah, but this is only for view, and
yeah, okay.
There are a lot of or different applications within Omniverse with different requirements. But I think the minimum good and ideal requirements are also listed within the Omniverse launcher, where you can install and load all the apps and so on. So you can also find those informations there, and I will post the link into the chat to the documentation.
Yeah. Okay. So obviously it all depends on how big is your data set, how heavy is your data set, how heavy is your geometry, how heavy is your textures, all these kind of things that usually play a role in the right GPU choice for either a game or a professional use case, right? And we will always have the situation where big customers create bigger data sets than our biggest GPU can do. We've been always hitting the hurdle, the roadblock, the wall basically for DirectX, OpenGL, or Vulkan rendering, that the jobs are single-threaded and can't be easily split across multiple GPUs. The benefit of ray tracing, or the beauty for a developer, the beauty of ray tracing is it is a very, very natively parallel job. So it scales wonderfully across many GPUs. So basically, the path for Omniverse to be able to do ray tracing in a virtual or on a virtualized environment, on a remoted environment, then just stream the image to the receiver desktop or the receiver tablet, even if you're using a view instance on a mobile tablet. You can have the horsepower of many GPUs behind that doing the ray tracing and create photorealistic imagery in real time if you use enough GPUs. So there is not one GPU that is the minimum for Omniverse. There is a recommendation to not go below RTX and not go below a specific performance level. I would assume it's in the 200 watts GPU range, but that is ultimately only giving you a less performance if you go for bigger data sets, and your experience is going to be bad because it's not going to be really interactive at one point in time, right? So give it a try. You'll figure it out with simple data sets. It'll be absolutely easy. The need is for RTX technology, which is in the 20 and a 30 series of GeForce cards, and which is in the Ampere and in the previous generation of workstation cards, right? So Anthony points out the need for the RTX technology. Yep. And Andreas, I think Chris has typed up another answer to your CloudXR multi-user setup. So I'm not reading it, but you're in great hands with Chris. So keep chatting with him, or just go in a one-on-one breakup. We've got a couple of more minutes, so breakup is still useful and possible.
Just to mention that the second link that I've posted lists all the different applications with the minimum recommendation. But as Frank mentioned, it depends on your workflow, workload, dataset, and so on.
Yeah, for some of the Omniverse demos for cities or digital twin, digital factory, you'll need a lot of GPUs, no doubt, right? And each generation, each future generation of GPUs shall make that lesser GPUs. But we're, over all 20 years, we've been always fighting for being fast enough with our biggest GPU, or being fast enough with many of our biggest GPUs. The demand is always increasing, the complexity is always increasing. And once we finally thought we can do a single car in real time, realistic, customers wanted 4 cars next to each other to be able to compare the 4. So we're not worried about more hunger for GPU performance, but obviously there is not such a wall at the entry unless it's for a specific technology. And that's what Anthony mentioned here. We need the RTX technology, which accelerates ray tracing significantly by the dedicated RT cores, special silicon in the chips for doing a specific step of ray tracing. That was the bottleneck so far. Yeah, more questions. I think there are more people listening here that haven't asked any type question. You can still do now. We can run over a little, but you can also use the quadrosvs@nvidia.com email alias, contacting a bunch of the solution architects on professional graphic stuff, on virtualization, and we will be happy to answer your questions at any time. I'm showing a bunch of questions here. So around vGPU, we often have the question about which vGPU, which GPU for virtual GPU should I use to get a good density. This is similar to which GPU should I use for my workstation use case, which GPU should I use for my Omniverse. It depends on your dataset, on your load, right? And on vGPU, it is even more visible because you're sharing, you're giving unused resources to the next user. So a thorough investigation about your need for GPU will be necessary to give you the best density. I'll leave the question about Material X to one of my experts. I'm hoping Chris or Anthony might be able to pick that, or otherwise follow up. I'll continue with the frequently questions. The protocols for different workloads, they vary. The different hypervisor vendors have their own remoting agents and come with different protocols. And then specific use cases can be tweaked the other way around. The protocols can be tweaked for specific use cases. That's a very individual discussion every time. We got some experience because we have these technologies for more than 5 years now, but that always is a very one-on-one question depending on the workload. Similar for the tools that would be usable for monitoring GPU usage and health. Actually, Thomas Remlinger is our expert on that. So connect with him if you want to go deeper on investigating your GPU in a virtual cluster. I mentioned the roadmap changes where we double the frame buffer on some of the boards. We have to fill the gap that the unavailability of RTX A4000 and A5000 are gonna show, and actually that should read RTX A4500 there. The services from enterprise support. Paul hasn't seen questions yet, but we have a big enterprise support team. They have services 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, or even 24/7. And they cover any production setup, right? If you have bought a NVIDIA license, you are also buying a support contract and paying for that. And Paul and the team is there to help you out and take your cases, answer your questions, service hardware that you might have bought straight from NVIDIA, like DGXs. And they deal with all these different things as NVIDIA services. Reading the chat. Okay, so Anthony is working on that questions about Material X. Perfect, thanks. The member of my team here working with some of the ISVs. And as that, he's got some experience of how to implement specific APIs and features about certification for like a CATIA certified driver, actually a CATIA certified system, or a SolidWorks certified driver, a Autodesk Fred recommended and certified driver, stuff like that. We can help out on. We didn't have any partner ecosystem specific questions, but that probably reads like the partners know who to ask. They don't need to sign up for a session like this one. That is more generic than just targeting partners. So we got solution architects that are dedicated to help out all partners, to help the partners sell. So we're getting to the top of the hour, actually a minute after. Yeah, there you go. So Anthony is working with Adam on the Material X question. It seems like that would be a follow-up. As he points out, we typically have a problem of prioritization. So what to implement first, which to you outside of NVIDIA looks like all the other stuff is simply not implemented. Which doesn't necessarily translate into it is not planned, or it should not be implemented, or we are never going to be implementing it. So that's why we like the exchange, that we get the questions and see the demand and basically reprioritize our engineering resources according to demand, right? If many people, for example, ask for Material X, that'll make it higher into the priority list, and sooner and more engineering is going to be assigned to implement that if we get the field feedback that this is a very important, very valuable feature. So keep the questions coming. Don't wait for NVIDIA to do documentation. Don't just wait for roadmap coming. Help us modify and adjust the roadmaps to your needs. So please keep communication with the engineer, with the NVIDIA team. Go via our solution architects, who are the customer-facing contacts on the technical side. If you have an account manager, if you have a partner manager, go through those. Technical questions will then come to our attention here, because we're basically the solution architects team in EMEA, covering any of the technical questions and doing the connections with headquarters. All right. Great. So I'm reading that we might be receiving a few more questions over Quadro SVS. We're beyond the top of the hour, so I'm ready to close this session. I'd like to thank everybody who joined the session, especially all the questions that came in from customers. Thanks to the team for helping answer these. We will follow up on anything that is open, where we had a link to who asked the question. Otherwise, please follow up through Quadro SVS at nvidia.com. and then we will follow up individually. Hope you had some learnings or got some questions answered in this session. If you hadn't asked a question yourself, hopefully the questions from your peers were interesting to you. Hope you're going to see more good sessions over the next couple of days at GTC. Enjoy your day, and thanks a lot. Say goodbye.